In 1980, in fact, January the 18th, 1980, at 7:18, I lost my dad. He was 37 years old. I was 14. We lived down in New Bern, North Carolina. My mom was up from the middle part of the state, and we'd moved down there. Dad had got a job with the highway doing some highway assessment.
Yeah.
And he was an up-and-coming real estate guy, just like yourself. And in fact, you look a little bit like my dad, which is kind of spooky. Got the same hairline.
Same.
That's a good thing. That's the highest compliment I can give a man.
All right. Beautiful.
But Dad moved down there, and he was a hustler, hard-working guy. I loved my mom. They had a great marriage. But then in 1980, my dad and mom were religious people, people of faith. And my dad was always trying to recruit other couples doing good works, and not in a pushy, overt way. I mean, he wasn't the bumper sticker fish guy, but he was just good people. And we had some missionaries that were in town, and they had organized a little gospel meeting, and Dad was trying to make it back for that. And so he was pushing it kind of hard, and they got into some really, really bad weather and low ceiling, and they made a couple approaches, and they should have peeled out. He had a Pilot, a little twin-engine Aztec, Apache, actually, and hit the trees and killed him. And as a result of that, there was a couple things that came out of that. Number one was that I love my dad so much. He was my everything. We were a really close-knit family. Got a younger brother and an older sister. And a couple things came out of that. One was just this absolute directive energy in me that wanted to honor the legacy of my dad. I just love my dad. He dressed me up in the summers when I was very young then, so he'd dress me up and we'd fly around the airplane with him. And I got to sit in business meetings with him and banker meetings. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But what I did learn was how you conducted yourself and the tempo and the cadence of things, and how I would watch my dad. Again, I didn't know what they were talking about, but I could see my dad introducing humor into the conversation to lighten the mood. And people loved my dad. He was a gregarious guy. And so I wanted to be that. I think we all want to be our father. If you've admired your father, you want to be your father. I've watched your father, and I've watched your grandfather, and now I'm meeting you for the first time, and I see all these similarities. And that's a tremendous advantage that I never really considered. But as a result of that, a couple things happened. One is that I had to make a decision if I was going to get over this. If I was going to get over life, or life was going to get over me. And it really, really hurt me. I mean, that is the deepest hurt I have ever experienced in my life. Now, I haven't had a child die, but having my father, who I was so close to, so bonded with, it really hurt me. But some things came out of that. One, I was driven. I wanted to honor the legacy of my father. I wanted to be my father. Number two, my father loved my mother. I mean, insatiably loved my mother. And my mother loved my dad. In fact, my mother is alive today at 85, and she's never taken off her wedding band. She's never been on a date. She's never talked to another man. And I asked her once why that was, and she told me that she never wanted to diminish the legacy of my father in her children's eyes.
Wow.
Now, buddy, I'm going to tell you, in today's world, that's a woman. And I took that for granted as a young man. I didn't really think about that. And I kept focusing on my dad. Didn't realize until probably 35 years later that probably the strong force in our family was my mother. So here we are now. There's 3 kids. My mom's a single mom. We're down in eastern North Carolina. We're not near any of our family. And I was the laziest student. If there was if somebody got in trouble, it was me. My brother's a straight arrow. My sister's just a godly woman, great gal. Always been a supporter, covered up for all my sins. But my brother had in what my dad had, which is I'd never heard in all of my years. I have never heard my brother tell a lie. He won't lie for anything. He won't lie for me. He won't lie for himself. He won't lie for anybody. I've never met anybody like that.
Yeah.
And my dad was like that, and I was not like that. And I wanted probably what a lot of young men want. I didn't know what it was, but it was in Eastern North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I got out of there the day after I graduated from high school and moved in with an older cousin who was 10 years older than me. And he was a little bit more my speed. He was a hustler. When we'd go out and have a wild time, we were sneaking Coors beer, which was illegal in eastern part of the United States. At that time, you couldn't get Coors beer, but people would bootleg it in. And and I learned to drink beer, which tastes like horse piss. But I trained myself to like it because it looked like all the cool people were doing it. But he taught me framing and he taught me hard work. His father was 73 at the time, and we stayed with them in their house. Had a great big house, and he was a framer. And every morning at 4:30, he'd ring this bell. And along the journey, all these moments became parts of my life. Things that I didn't realize at that moment were adding to my life. What I learned about that, number one, was you're going to get hit, and you're going to get hit hard in life. I mean, you're going to find your knees, and that's a good thing. You get hurt, good. Because what it does is two things. One is that you only gain experience through failure. When things are going right, you don't learn anything from that. You don't even know if maybe you got lucky.
It's a trap. It's because so many people work so hard to avoid failure and avoid shame and avoid public scrutiny. And they imagine that staying outside of that is the easier path, when in fact it's not at all.
I agree.
This is Donald Phillips, by the way, everybody. We've been rolling, David, correct? Okay, cool. That was a great.
Oh, sorry, I thought.
That was like the perfect.
I've never done a podcast together. If I trip,
no, man, that was. I think we were just getting acquainted, and that story about losing your father. You were 14 years old. You look up to this man as he's basically your hero. You could say
absolutely, he's my everything.
And you lose him in a tragedy that, no indication something like that would happen. No. Completely out of the blue.
Yeah,
and
I'll tell you.
It sounds like it changed your life, but it sounds like it also took you growing older to look back on the effect that had on you.
That's the irony of life. When you're standing in youth looking forward, you can only anticipate. And at that moment also, you can, in your mind, decide you want to be anything you want to be. You think, I'm going to be an astronaut. I got time to be an astronaut. You want to join the Army, be a Green Beret, you can do that too. Whatever, you can dream up. I want to own a Gulfstream. Great, put that in the box.
Yeah.
But then as you get a little bit older, those doors start closing. And you will reach a point. It's like crossing the Rubicon. For me, it was probably about 50, when you really, truly realize that there's more of your life behind you than there's in front of you. I mean, on a productive, engaged way, okay? And that's really what I'm about, is quality time remaining. But going back to that tragedy, a couple of things resonated in my life. Number one, my mother was the one that taught me to deal with that tragedy, and I didn't realize it at the moment. When Dad got killed that night coming home, we would get in Mom and Dad's bed because we didn't want to miss our dad coming home. And this was a pretty typical thing. Dad worked really long hours. We were down in eastern North Carolina, and he had to travel a lot, so he had this airplane. And what we would do is that he would come in and throw us kids out of bed, but we knew that in throwing us out of bed, we would get to see our dad. And so we got in bed that night, and all I remember is I woke up in the middle of the night because Dad didn't make it to this little gospel meeting that he had arranged, which was odd. And Mom, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and all the lights in the house were on. And my mom, we lived in a big house down in Newbern, North Carolina, and my mom was up sleeping the floor. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? I mean, now, again, I'm only 14 years old. What are you doing? She goes, I'm cleaning up. Go to sleep, son. You're going to need it for tomorrow. And I was like, well, but I was sleeping. Go back to sleep. And my mom is the most stoic, God, I'll probably choke up. But my mom is probably the most stoic woman I've ever met, because my dad was a really, really popular guy in our family. We have a very large family in the church. And people started coming in from everywhere. And she went off in private and cried for a few hours and then got it together and started making arrangements for people, making funeral arrangements, stuff like that. And then later on, that taught me to deal with tragedy. Whether you're in an airplane and you fly into a thunderstorm, you allow yourself a few moments of panic, or you fly a business into the ground, you got a little bit of time to panic. You lose a marriage, you lose somebody dear, you got a few moments to panic, but you better get it together, because there's people that rely on you and that you're responsible for. And I learned that from my mom, probably more than anything. So that was the flip side. Got the hustle and the go from Dad, but really in the end, that's great until you hit the wall.
Yeah.
And then what do you do?
Right.
And
we should say too, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing all this. It's certainly a part of your story, and it's it's a part of your journey.
Yeah,
and the reason you are the man you are today. And You are the founder of Woodie's Wash Shack. That's probably how most people maybe around town know you. But I know
Yeah,
you're a real estate
know.
guy here for a long
Yeah.
time too. Woodie's is kind of a real estate business in some
It
ways,
is a real
right?
estate business.
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the businesses you own. But what, if someone was to ask you like who are you and what are you, would you say you're an entrepreneur? Is that a good way to describe you and the things you've done in your life?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird word these days, but
it is. It used to be a novel word, but for sure, I had one job. I had one job. Actually, I got a job because the fellow was a pallbearer of my dad. But he gave me a shot, and I worked for Shoe Show, and it was run by a guy named Bob Tucker. He's a tough dude, great guy. And that is the other thing that I learned too. I thought people were being hard on me, but actually tough love was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so it was the first job I had. It was the first job I got fired from, and it was the last job I had. And after that, I decided that boom or bust. I wasn't fit for it. I wasn't cut out for it, and I just had to go my own way. And I wasn't educated.
I was going to say, it sounds like an education. You felt the same way. Like, this ain't for me, man. Sitting in class doing homework.
Yeah, I've struggled through 2 semesters of Elon. I'm alum. And that was kind of a funny story, too. My grandfather, I wasn't going to go to college. And my grandfather reminds me a lot of your grandfather, just cut from the same cloth. I went to him and I said, Granddaddy, I said, I don't think I'm going to go to college. It's not for me. And I said, I barely got out of high school. And he says, son, you want to go to college for one solitary reason. And I said, why is that? And he says, because one day somebody's going to ask you, did you go to college and where? And you can honestly say, yes, sir, I attended Elon College. He says they never finish the sentence about did you
What's
graduate?
Your GPA?
Yeah, they don't ask
That's
that,
true.
Yeah. And that's kind of a funny thing all my life.
Well, but when you're so young and you're planning on going to college, it's the biggest deal ever. And you're so worried about, well, what school am I going to and how am I going to get there? And how's it going to be perceived after I graduate? But then when you get a little older, like my age, early 30s, you look back and go, that shit, that never mattered really. I mean, unless you're going for like, if you want to be an attorney or professional.
Practice trade or specialty or skilled, one thing that did, one thing that I'll leave that chapter of my life behind after I finish this. But one thing that I did learn about all of that was that for many, many years, and I think can apply this to most parts of your life, loss, whether it's whatever it is, marriage, death, whatever, business, you're going to have to decide whether or not that's going to define you or you're going to use it to define yourself. And in that particular case, I had a great deal of resentment about the loss of my father. And I had a trip, I was envious of young men that had a father that had a successful business because I felt like I was truly alone. I mean, I was absolutely alone. And I didn't have anybody, and everybody that I was trying to work with was just trying to get a deal done. And if you get in the way, you get squeezed. And so I resented that. And then I realized later on it was the best blessing because now I have a lot of friends who grew up in a family business and they got out of the gate quick. But the old man is tough, and you have to measure up at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas in some of these places. You got a brother and sister that aren't pulling their weight, and you're doing all the work, and it creates a huge schism in that family potentially. I've seen this wreck families over and over and over. And then when I got to be about your age, in my early 30s, I began to realize that, man, what a blessing that is. Because then guys started coming to me, and they'd go, man, Don, I wish I were you. And I'm like, man, I can't believe you're saying that. But they would go, because you don't live under the burden of expectation that's being layered on me. You don't live under the burden of having a family business that's divided amongst 3 or 4 people unequally.
Right.
And, I started to see, the glass half full as opposed to empty on a lot of issues in my life regarding loss and challenges and things of that stuff.
Sometimes the hardest parts of your life are the biggest advantage you have to move forward. I mean, I certainly have pressures with my last name. I feel like everyone on the show I talk to, they always have some story about how my grandfather helped them with this or that.
Sure.
My great grandfather was in business. He owned a hardware store.
That's right.
And a couple service stations, and he was kind of an entrepreneur, a quiet entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then my dad and my grandfather were in politics, but they were never an enterprise. I mean, I don't have a trust fund or a business or anything. I kind of have to make that for my life and my family. And I've recognized since I graduated college and even before that, that business is very important. and money is very important. And maybe 50 years ago, when they were growing up and even before that, you could start a business and make money and provide for a family, or you could get a good job and have a few kids and provide. Very difficult today. And money, I think, is more important than ever. And so I've focused on business, and my grandfather and father did not. And so I've been trying to create different things. I mean, I started like an aerial production company, and I've done some real estate stuff for the last 10 years. I don't make any money from this show. I mean, maybe we could get a few more sponsors one day. I got to pay this guy over here a bunch of money.
You haven't called on Woody's Wash Shack, brother.
Well, we should talk after the show. But it's like, I think that there are a lot of good things that come from feeling like you're alone. And when your back is up against the wall and you have, like I said, I don't have, an uncle dies and I get a bunch of money, or a grandfather or someone in your family has a business or anything to pass down. The only thing I have is good graces with the community, a good name, which is powerful. That's a big deal. And so I have to live up to that in the way I do business and the way I speak to people and my character. And that's a powerful motivator for me. But it doesn't change the fact that I am starting in some senses financially from the ground floor. And I've been working on that for 10 years, and I'm happy with where I'm at. And we talked over Zoom, and one thing I told you was, and I'm kind of in this phase of my life where you taste a little bit of success. And I've started to, over the last couple of years, feel like I've had to rest on my laurels. It seems like, when you're 20 years old, you can take an unbelievable amount of risk. You can really go for things. And if you fall on your ass, well, you don't have a wife and a family to take care of. Now I've got the house.
That's right.
And I've got the wife and the 2-year-old and a baby due in 1 month. And so for me to take a risk in business, there's a little bit heavier of a weight to that. You, sir, you've started over a couple of times in your life, gone from 100 to 0 and 0 to 100 multiple times. You said, you sent me a message, which we don't have to get into, but basically this message outlines some of your life. You didn't start Woodies until how old? 52 years old. 53. Yeah. And it's become incredibly successful. Yeah. I mean, it's a total brand around these parts. And every time I go, I'm probably your best customer. My wife, I think we have like 15 of your beach balls, by the way.
Oh, I brought you 2 more.
Okay, good. My wife will be very happy with that. But anyway, like it just seems to me like that risk-taking aspect of business and entrepreneurship can't ever go away. You don't want to fully sit back and put your feet up and be happy where you're at, because there could be a situation in the economy or with your family where there's a tragedy that sets you back. You always have to be forward thinking, and you always have to take risks. And this whole Woodies deal, we'll get into it soon, but it's so creative, and the brand of it, it's very forward thinking. Was that something you wrestled with for a long time in terms of, well, let me plan the brand out, and am I really going to take the risk? And who the hell is going to go to a car wash? I mean, the drive-through car wash, the model you have, now there's 15 different brands, I feel like.
That's right. Names.
Brands. Sure.
Big difference.
But it does seem to me like when you guys started it, it was kind of this new thing where it's like membership-based, you go through. Why don't we start with that? Let's talk Woodies and then kind of turn back the clock on the real estate stuff.
Well, that, and then I would like to revisit this concept about opportunity.
Yeah.
And because I think there's more opportunity today than there's ever been, but we'll debate it. Well, Woodies came about for a couple of reasons. First, from a financial perspective, I've been building multifamily all my life, and about the time I was your age, I think I was working on about my second multifamily deal. And the trick in real estate, at least for me, was that every time I finished a deal and sold it, I would 1031 like-kind exchange into another one. Well, you do that for 30 years, and you come up with this great big wad of deferred gain that's sitting in a project like I was, that you want to sell. In this case, is about a $150 million sale, I think it was, and I had about a $98 million gain. But about 42 million of that I'd been carrying in the way of taxes.
Whew.
So you're going to get a lot of money, and you're going to feel good for a day, and then Uncle Sam is going to take the rest of it and use it on something you don't want to use it on. And so I had to find a way out of that. And it was not to go find another bigger single asset entity to roll it all in. So I needed to find something. So I'm sitting there staring at the headlight of that train, wondering, how am I going to get off this escalator? The second issue that I had was that I had recently come out of a divorce that I didn't know that I was going to have, and I'm sitting there all of a sudden with 5 kids, 3 which are autistic, and recognizing that I want to have a business my kids can work into in some way, but it's not going to be in multifamily development. Multifamily development is a very technical,
Yeah.
difficult, capital intensive thing. And I've got this kid, Cole, who's now 14, but at the time, he was 6 or 7 when we started talking about it. And he's the most severely challenged, but he's a super, super happy kid. And he's very observant, especially on iPads and iPhone. And he started watching car wash jingles. And so we would start, he loved car washes, lights and all that. So we would start watching these things. So that's sitting in the back of my mind, and I'm having this constant thought. And because I believe that opportunity in life is a confluence of several things. And then at the same time, I was thinking about that. I had this divorce that I didn't see coming, and I'm trying to figure out how to get off the floor. I just finished getting myself out of a quagmire that began in 2008 with all these multifamily projects. And I didn't really want to go back into having 55 employees and try to fire that empire back up, because that took me my entire lifetime at that point to build. I didn't have another lifetime to build it. So I'm looking for something, and I know that it has to be in real estate. That's another piece of advice I would give is every time I've been in real estate, I've done okay. Every time I get out of my discipline, I get my head taken off. I'm just not that smart. I'm not Elon Musk. I can't do that. So I knew that I need to stay in real estate. And then the final piece of that came to bear was, having been through the divorce, I wanted to be relevant. And what was happening in my business was, because, to your point, I was afraid to take that risk and put it all back on the line again. I just come out of that.
Right.
I couldn't stomach that again. I mean, when you're down to reading fine print in life insurance contracts, thinking that, because you can't sleep at night and maybe there is no other way for you to support your family, when you get that dark and you get that low, you don't want to go back into that room.
Damn.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's
and
very heavy.
It's to your point, it's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a lesson in that. If men take on the obligation of a family, that is their obligation. You don't get to walk away from that.
No.
And that is your first priority. It's not about you anymore. It's about you and them.
It's a big weight, but it feels good.
Yeah, it will later.
Yeah.
And it'll feel better and better and better when you get to be your grandfather. It's all that you have is family.
Right.
So those things all came together, and I wanted to be relevant. And I knew that I had to find a way to create energy around me. And so here I am. I'm sitting now. I'm kind of in this interesting position where I'm making a pretty sizable income. Money's just flowing in. Mailbox money's just coming in from these 5 apartment complexes I had salvaged out of this. In fact, it's going really good. I mean, just to be very patently frank, I was probably making $3 to $5 million a year, and I could just sit right there, and that's great. But then this thought occurred to me: you're not relevant. You're just sitting around. What example are you setting for your kids? What example are you setting for the young men and women that had been in my business before? At 52 to 53, I didn't want to go out to pasture, and I needed to find something.
You didn't define some of that success by that number, 3 to 5 million. Oh, 3 to 5 million. That's super successful.
Yeah, well, maybe successfully financially, but you're not productive. And God didn't, in my opinion, my humble opinion, God put you here to do the very best and to find a way to capitalize on the potential that you have. And if you have potential, you are obligated to go pursue that. That's my theory in life. And so I didn't want to sit there and get fat thinking about what I had done. I wanted to be relevant. And now I had these kids that are sitting there looking at their dad. So I wanted to do something. So all of that came together, and a guy walked in. He's now my partner. He walked in one day, and who I admire tremendously, Glenn Steiger, and he has an interest in the company. And he walked in one day, and he said, "I want to show you something." And he showed me a video of a car wash in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it hit me, Garrett, like a lightning bolt.
Wow.
And I said, "This is it." I've always loved branding. I love to encourage people. I grew up around people that were in the ministry and watched how they changed lives with the power of their voice and their conviction. And I said, I think maybe this is something for me. Maybe this is what this podcast has become for you. You start down a path and it turns into something. Next thing you know, you're Joe Rogan. You don't
Yeah.
know where that's going to lead.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. What did you do with branding before Woody's? You said you were very into branding. You liked branding things.
Well, I have a theory that you have to honor up. And my theory in that is that whatever you do, the way that you do anything is the way you should do everything.
Mm.
And when I was building up my multifamily business, I cared a lot about appearances because I think appearances mean a lot. First impressions mean everything. I never, when I was dating, if I met a gal that had two front teeth missing, I didn't hang around for the second date. I don't know why. I just didn't do it. It just didn't hit me as a great impression. And so, so I just decided that everything I wanted to do, I wanted to do it right. When I mustered up and bought a little airplane, a little Citation, I was about 38 years old. I had a custom carpet runner in the middle. It had Phillips Development Realty on it. I spent a lot of time working on my branding because it's your avatar. It is your coat of arms. It's your shield. It's the thing that people see. And I tried to do, I knew that people would get on my airplane maybe. I used to go buy these really nice cocktail napkins, and they got on that airplane and they'd look around that airplane. That may be the only piece of my life and my business that some banker would ever touch. And he'd go, man, this guy's got it going on. I have always built everything like I had owned a Fortune 500 company. And that's really what played in with Woody's. I decided if I'm going to get in it, I'm going to get all the way in it.
And it was a video of this partner, now partner. Who was he to you at the time? Just a friend?
No, my life has always been made out of the dent and scratch specials. I met Glenn years and years ago, 30 years ago in Raleigh, North Carolina. And long story short on that is he called me 10 years ago and said, I've had a lot of challenges and I'm starting over. We'll just leave it at that. And we had this long call catching up, and it was late at night. And I said, we talked, and I said, well, you know what? The next time you're down in Tampa, I said, why don't you stop in and see me? We're finishing up the call. He says, well, I'm here. And I said, really? That's cool. I said, well, maybe we can get together in the next couple of days. He said, well, what are you doing tonight? And I said, well, Glenn, I said, shoot, I'm sitting in my office. I said, I got to go home. He said, that's all right. I'm sitting in your parking lot. And I was like, wow, there's another one. And I love people like that because that's the kind of way I operated. And that's how we met. That's where it started. And he sat there in my office and starved for 3 years trying to figure out. I said, dude, all I can do is I can just give you an office and a place to be. And, we'll try to put something together. And in 3 years, I think the first thing we capitalized on, he found a piece of property for me, which he probably had already owed everybody the money he made on it, over in Skyway Marina District, which we now have the Sur Club apartment complex on. And then the next thing we did is he said, well, have you ever considered self-storage? And that's another story for another day. But we ended up doing 5 of those, and then he and I sold those, and then we took that money and I rolled it over into Woody's. And then he walked in with Woody's. And for various reasons, we decided self-storage business wasn't us. We felt like the train had kind of left the station. The big players already moved in on that. Right. And I'm an early guy. I've always been the first guy. They say the pioneers get the arrows and the farmers get the land, but I've always been the pioneer. I've got to be the first guy.
Pioneers get paid.
Yeah, sometimes.
But it's risky. It's bold and risky. You got to have creativity. So so it sounds like you were both open to sort of starting over. You both had a little money and you both wanted something to dive into.
Yeah.
And he shows you this video.
And he shows me this video.
Now, why do you think it hit you hard? You were getting ready to tell me you had always loved branding.
Yeah.
And what did this video show that made you so attracted to the business?
Well, because it was like a kaleidoscope of my life coming together in a moment. And by that, I mean, I love cars. I had an affinity for branding. You're a brand guy. I'm a brand guy. Even if you don't know it, you're a brand guy. Nobody's riding around with Igloo stickers on their truck window. Yeti isn't about cooler. It's just about a lifestyle.
Exactly.
And people want to belong to something, and people want to identify with something. Jesus, how many Facebook groups are there? Right. And that was always rattling around in the back of my mind. It's just these little bits and pieces, these flashes of light that you're seeing all the time. And I like the principles of it. What I liked about it is, first of all, I'm not a real sophisticated guy. My dad used to say, son, the Phillipses aren't the brightest in the bunch, but we work twice as hard and we get to the same place. And I was like, you know what? I might not be able to do a lot of things, but I do think I can wash a car. And so I like that aspect of it. I wanted to try something that was outside the realm of what I've been doing, these big multifamily projects. And I think maybe Garrett, 3 times in my life. I mean, I've built 30-story high rises in Houston, Texas, but I think maybe 3 times in my life somebody's walked up to me, probably twice was my mama, and said, you know,
This episode is brought to you by the official remodeler of the TBD podcast, Kohler House Remodeling Company. Built on the belief that every homeowner deserves a premium experience, Kohler House is redefining high-end home remodeling with their commitment to integrity, craftsmanship, and quality communication. Their work speaks for itself, from condos in the towers of Channelside to 100-year-old homes in South Tampa, creating spaces that are both stunning and functional. What sets Kohler House Remodeling Company apart is their dedication to not only transforming homes into beautiful spaces, but to elevating the standard of residential general contracting. From concept to completion, every detail is handled with care, ensuring a process that's as smooth as the results are impressive. To learn more, check out our partner's website at kohlerhouse.net, KOHLERHAUS.net. This episode is sponsored by Chansey Architecture and Interior Design. Rooted in the heart of Ybor City for over 35 years, Walt Chansey and his team are trailblazers in their field. Beyond their work across the United States and the Bahamas, Chansey has shaped some of the most iconic residential and commercial spaces that serve as gateways to Cigar City, including Casa Marti and Casa Gomez. What sets Chansey Design apart is their ability to preserve the soul and character of historic buildings while seamlessly integrating modern design and functionality. They blend tradition with innovation, creating spaces that honor the past while meeting today's needs. Check out their work at www.chanseydesign.com.
that was a really cool project that you did.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd like to have something that has more currency in it. And I had a friend that owned a bunch of Taco Bells, and I'd watch him give out Taco Bell cards. Man, people would line up for a Taco
Even
Bell.
something as simple as
Just
that. you
$15,
wanted to-
just
yeah.
$15 gift card.
Yeah.
Just the currency of the relationship. I wrote the president of Starbucks once and said, I got a great idea for you. You ought to issue business cards with a Starbucks coupon on the back, because what would happen is you give a guy a card, he tosses in the trash. It doesn't have any value. How can I bring value to something small?
Yeah.
So I started thinking about that, and I just started looking at the wash business. I said, these guys don't get it. And what happened is it's been revolutionized by membership, annually reoccurring revenue. Well, suddenly you could get them financed because a banker could track that, and you could leverage that. And Wall Street was paying a premium for membership. There's a reason it's a hot commodity. And but membership is about belonging. And I couldn't see the value proposition to belonging to an average car wash. I always use the example. If you go down Gandy Boulevard, this is before I even had a car wash, and let's just say we go down Gandy Boulevard, we build 3 car washes. Well, there's about 4 to 5 manufacturers that are building 85% of the equipment in the car wash industry, maybe 4. Well, Sonny's alone is probably developed. They probably own 50% of the market. So if there's 3 car washes on Gandy Boulevard, all doing the same thing with the same equipment, looking for the same customer, who's going to walk away with the membership? So what is my unique value proposition? I used to express it to my guys as like, if I was still 32 and handsome like you are, and we had a buddy that was about like us, and we all had about the same amount of money, we walked into a bar, and there's one beautiful gal. Who's going to walk out of that bar with her number? Well, you better know a good card trick. I better know a cool bar trick, or he better be a funny SOB, because she's only going to end up with one of us. Mm-hmm. And I call that the unique value proposition. So how are we going to win that? And that got me thinking about, okay, if I've made a decision to get into the business, how do I take it from being ordinary to extraordinary? And that's what put me on the track of thinking about how I'm going to do that.
Is there any thought during this time when you're developing these ideas about well, how expensive is this? Or people like, does the negativity come into your head, and does that stop you from implementing these ambitious ideas? Because a lot of this is creativity.
Yeah.
A lot of this is just like, here's an idea. Let's look at this thing. Do you ever think, well, who the hell would ever want to pay, $40 a month
Yeah.
for a membership? And
Yeah.
the naysayer gets room in people's heads sometimes, myself
Well,
included.
yeah, sure. But it's like combat or something. The first thing I always saw problems in three sections, three tranches or opportunity, excuse me. Firstly is the why proposition. Why are we going to do this? Now, when we're having the spitball why proposition, you got to get all the engineers, you got to get all the accountants, you've got to get that mindset of the how and the what out of the room. This is just the why.
Right.
And this is how I hold my meetings. No one is able to say anything about somebody else's idea. I don't allow that voice inside my head to think that way. Let's talk about the why. Now, once we get done with the why, we can talk about what we're going to do, and then we can get on down to the granular and exactly how we're going to do it. And that's an interesting observation, because it seemed to me that everybody in the business at that time was getting that an exact opposite.
Right.
The entire industry was run by the manufacturers. That's why they're all so hideous. It's just a tunnel to cover up their equipment. It's a bunch of engineers sitting around designing it. And I got to thinking about, well, why don't we start at the other end of this animal and work our way down to how we're going to do it? And so I just apply that process. So at that moment, no, I don't. I don't allow myself to think about that. Let's
I love
stick with
that
the why.
idea. I love the idea of not letting those thoughts of, well, what's the permitting process with the blah, blah, blah. Forget that.
Yeah,
That's for a later date.
Yeah.
What we're talking about right now is creativity and the why behind this.
To be frank, don't listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm too busy. And I also have not, and as a result of that, I have not heard a lot of podcasts or have heard a lot from Elon, but I admire Elon. And I would just use this as an example, not because I'm anywhere like Elon at all. Don't, for God's sake, don't think I'm saying that. But I don't think when Elon Musk sat down with the concept, which was his first concept about SpaceX, Occupy Mars, that was his first why proposition. The fact that he's on Raptor engine number 7, 8, 9, 10, man, that's a downstream problem. That's somewhere down in the how and what proposition. But he wasn't thinking about evolving a Raptor engine. He was thinking about getting to Mars. That's my observation. And I'm just using that as a grand example. Not, again, just to be clear, I'm not anywhere near Elon Musk, but
sure.
I just think that's the process that he had to go through. What is the objective? Why are we going there? Why are we going to do this? And once you've satisfied yourself with that proposition, everything else is a cascading line. You may kill it down there. It may be that it's just physically impossible. It may be that it's financially impossible, but you can't start that way, or you'll never allow an idea to grow.
And I think that when there's so many, especially in real estate development, there's so many projects that don't start from that angle. They start from the analytical. They start from the spreadsheet. They start from the building code and all these little, before they know it, they've built themselves into this box, and you just receive this crappy product. You can tell Woody's starts with creativity. And the reason I ask you this whole thing, by the way, yes, we're on a podcast, but I'm asking you from a selfish perspective because I'm at a point in my life where I have a lot of opportunity, and I have a piece of real estate I bought, and I didn't do a pro forma on it. I believe in the neighborhood. I love the building, and there's a couple different things I could do, and I have ideas of my own. And I'm asking you that because I've looked at videos, and I've had those moments like you probably had when you saw Woody's for the first time, and I'm like, holy shit, I think this would freaking kill it. So I ask you, that's why I've asked you how to navigate that in your own head, because you could have easily sat back and done something else with that 1031 money. You didn't have to dive into this. You're doing it for a purposeful reason.
Well, here's a good illustrative example. One of the first projects I did in in Tampa was down West Shore, just south of Gandy, um, at Tyson, but not the way like going to Salt Shack, but the other way where there's a self-storage facility now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had everything. I had tied up all the land behind that self-storage building, and it went all the way out to whatever that is, Himes or something.
Probably Manhattan.
Manhattan, excuse me. Correct. And I had this piece of land there, and we couldn't get all the units we wanted on it. And the city didn't like it, and everybody down there didn't like it. They didn't like what I was proposing. They didn't like what was there because it's a weed-filled lot with a bunch of junkies in it and a bunch of homeless people. And I got to thinking about that project and how, and this is the way I've always done a project. I never held a community meeting because I had to. I always got the community involved a long time before I ever came to the city. I never went into a city council vote without my votes in my pocket, knowing that I wasn't going to have opposition. You don't have opposition. You're 85% confirmed. But if you got 5 people, I mean, it's interesting to me. Politicians can be elected with 51% of the vote, but as a developer, you got to have 99.9% of the vote to win. Because if one idiot shows up who is probably against the planting of a tulip garden, he's going to yell until somebody doesn't give you the vote, because politicians are spineless. And with a few exceptions, one being your president at the moment. And I think that is the way that I would go about it, knowing that. So what I would do is I'd go down there and I'd meet the homeless guy. There was one that lived down there, they had a little cardboard city down there. I'd get to know him, take a little malt beer, they like that. And I'd take pictures of them, and we'd talk about it. And I'd get a little video of them, talk about how nice it was and how much they enjoyed that piece of property. And I'll never forget this. And I don't know if your grandfather was mayor then or not. It might have been right after him.
What year was this you're talking?
God, I'm trying to think. It's probably about 2003.
That's right, when he
I think it was about the time he left.
Yeah.
Because I met him right when I was getting to town.
Sure.
And so what I did is I put up I had a big poster. This is what I started my presentation with. First thing I did was I went all the way around there, and I held my own meeting at the hotel up the road. And I talked to all the neighbors, and we solved all those issues. I never hired an attorney to talk to people. I think that's the wrong thing. People go about doing that. Some slick attorney just pisses people off. And what I'd do is I'd go down there, because what I realized is the people that lived around there, they'd always ask me, so who do you represent? I said, I represent me. And I'll stand for this project. This is my name on this project. I don't need a land use attorney to come down here and talk slick willy to you. I'm the guy, because if it's not right, it's going to come back to me anyhow.
Sure.
So I would cut the deals with those guys. There's an old guy, he's passed now, so we can talk about him, named Al Stinson. And he was against everything down there. But because of the way I did that, and we got that vote passed, I took this picture of a homeless guy, and I took a picture of a good-looking couple like you and your wife, and I put them side by side, and I said, you've got a choice here tonight about who you want to live there. And
who do you want your neighbor to be?
Yeah, and I said, the neighbors that are there don't want this. And as a result of the way I conducted that, Al Stinson, who could not stand the Expressway Authority, was the first guy to write me a letter of recommendation and ask that I go get on the board of the Expressway Authority. And he fought that overhead pass the entire time I was on it. But at the end of it, he and I'd go have a beer, we'd go fishing, and talk through because it gets personal, as you know. I mean, my life's hinging on a decision as a developer, and his lifestyle is hinging on it as an individual. But we'd reconcile that just in a neighborly way. I'd go meet with him.
He was in charge of the neighborhood
Yeah, and he was the most
association?
active. There's always one guy that's out there, self-described band leader that's trying to, put a hole in it. And frankly, back to what I said earlier, trying to find his ability to be, he's a retired guy. He's got nothing. He was dying with cancer the whole time I knew him. And he wanted to be relevant.
Yeah.
He wanted to be somebody. And that was his way of being somebody. And you got to recognize that. You got to find out what is it that's driving that person to make that decision. That's what's important. It's not about my buddy Toxie Hall at Clearview Design drawing a bunch of lines on paper.
Yeah.
It's not about that. What it's about is you've got to find a way to get people to synchronize what's important to them with what's important to you. That's the magic.
Yeah. I will say that some of those people are valuable, though, especially the ones that are informed and they pay attention,
Yeah.
they're fighting for the community. They're trying to stand up and say, hey, this is really going to negatively impact us.
I got one. I'm going to tell you the funniest story ever.
Let's hear it.
It's about Woodies. All right. Let's see. Okay, here it's right here.
This is Gandy.
This is
east of.
Okay,
this is near Bayshore.
All right. This is all right. On the other end of Gandy, is our first store. And I went down there and built this car wash on 0.68 acres. Now, they said you can't build a car wash on less than an acre. Well, you can go down there and look at that one. That's 0.68 acres. And this was the first.
You got it, David. Zoom in right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Central Rock Gym on that west side.
There you go.
North side of the Selman.
You're coming in. There you go.
Right there in the center, David. Left.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah. There's so many stories about Woodies. This actually, Woodies is every lesson, for better or for worse, that I've ever realized, that I've ever experienced in my life. So here's the top of it. So if you look on the left-hand side there, so you know how you go in and you circle and you go through the tunnel and you come out.
Yeah.
Right? Well, right up this little Task Street, South Task Street, and you go up about a block, there was a gal that lived there. Her name was Eileen. So I lived in West Shore Yacht Club at the time, and I just opened up. This is my first de novo car wash. I bought one on 66, renovated, and concepted it all out, and this is my big deal. Don promoting the hell of his car wash. Get this car wash open. Well, I get a certified letter in the mail from this gal, Eileen, lives up on Taft Street. And she sent me certified letters. She sent them all office. She sent them all around. And she was on some group, some neighborhood group, and had everybody all fired up. And by the time I got it, this thing is a bubbling mess. She said, I'm going to turn you in to call John Morgan, and I'm calling the Attorney General and all this crap. And I was like, what in the world? And my hero, my little autistic son, Nuggy, we call him Cole, he and I were together that day, and I got this letter in my mailbox. It was the nastiest letter. And you're ruining our lives, and you're destroying our community, and your car wash is noisy, and I'm calling all the radio stations, television stations. I was like, oh, my God. So her address is on the letter. I go rolling up Taft Street. Nuggy's with me. Nuggy is the biggest fan of Woodies you've ever met. I mean, that guy bleeds Woodies. He's watched this ever since it was a car wash video and watched Dad build this thing.
Hell yeah. So
we go rolling in there, and I hit the door. And
damn, you pulled up on her.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the woman won't talk to me, clearly. I mean, she's threatened to kill me practically. And so I roll up on her, hit the door, and she don't come out, And I'm looking around there, and I hear this screen door slam across the way. Bam! And I look out there, and here comes this gal, boy. She's just steaming out across the yard. And she come over, and she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm here to talk to Eileen. And she goes, yeah. I said, well, who are you? She goes, I'm her neighbor.
Damn.
And I was like, oh, my God, big dog over there barking behind the fence. Nuggy, he's looking at Dad. So this little lady come out the back, and I said, are you Eileen? She goes, yeah. I said, Eileen. I said, I'm Don Phillips. I said, me and Nuggy went to the mailbox this morning, and you sent us this letter. And I said, this is about the most god-awful letter I think I've ever gotten. And she goes, well, yeah. I wrote that letter because you opened that car wash down there, and all we listen to is your dryers blowing all the time, and it's making all this racket, and we can't sleep, and you're destroying the quality of life in our neighborhood, and yada, yada, yada. Well, I just let her vent. And I said, well, Eileen, I said, my car wash is a whole whopping block from your house. It used to be a time that when we were neighbors, that we would go over and we would talk to our neighbor. I said, your friend over here, we use the name Susan. Is this your neighbor? She goes, oh, yeah, she's my best friend. Mm-hmm. I said, you see that big dog that Susan's got back there popping his teeth and barking? If that dog is barking at night, keeping you awake, do you write a letter to the Attorney General? Do you threaten her with some law firm? No. You go over there and you knock on the door. And you go, Susan, can you get that dog to knock it off? He's keeping me awake at night. I said, Eileen, why don't you just walk down the street and say, Mr. Phillips, I can't sleep. Your car wash is making too much racket. And she looked at me like I'd hit her in the head. And I said, I'll tell you what you do. I said, now I'm on this, God, I can't remember the name of the little network app everybody uses in the neighborhood.
Next door.
Nextdoor. Oh my God. That's a sewing circle if there ever was one. And
Last place a developer wants to be.
you know what, buddy? Just get right in there with them. I'm just going to tell you. People are so sick and tired of somebody passing the buck that if you raise your hand and say, you know what? If I screwed it up, I'll fix it. I am the guy that you're complaining about. So before 40 of you form a war party, let's just talk it out first, okay? Because they just get each other all riled up. So I said, I'll tell you what you do. Why don't you get on your network there, call up everybody you've pissed off. And I said, y'all come on down there next Saturday morning. Let's hash this out. Let's fix this problem. Well, I'll tell you something, Garrett. Of course, I knew my customer, so I had about 5 boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts down there waiting on him with boxes of coffee.
Damn.
And we went and toured that car wash. And this is a 2-story. I started the 2-story car wash here in town. And we walked upstairs. I showed them all the equipment, showed them how to recycle the water. We reutilize 75% of the water. Went through the whole thing. So you girls bring your cars over here. It's mostly gals, And I said, drive your cars. Let's wash some cars together. Let me show you how this all works. Well, we spent about an hour there. Buddy, by the time we finished that, we had rolled out a whole plan to go in there and put sound abatement material in there. I said, look, I didn't know, Eileen.
Right.
Now, here's the cool part of this story. I turned that dark negative into the highest positive. I decided that this was a great opportunity for Woodies to demonstrate to the community the value of having a local-owned business. I'm a car nut. Right down the street, I restore old cars. And I had just finished a 1955 F-100 pickup truck. And I put a big old decal on the side of that thing. Woodie's Wash Shack Clean Team. And I put, just like the race car drivers do, I put on the door of it, Eileen. I put it right up there on the door.
Damn.
And when things would get slow, we'll pile the boys in the back of that thing, and we ride through the streets around our car washes. And we have an A-frame in there with a QR code on it for Woodie's Wash Shack. And we pick up litter out of the street. We've gotten a couple calls, so they call the cops on, what are these guys doing? I said, man, we're just out here doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're just taking interest in our community, and we're just picking up trash. That gal, it just broke her heart. And she became the biggest brand ambassador for Woodie's Wash Shack. People would start ranting on us in Nextdoor, and old Eileen would jump in there and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, my hat is off her. I miss her. She moved away. But I used to go over and visit with her and have coffee. And she became one of Woodie's biggest fans. When we were doing the next car wash at the other end of Gandy, and people were jumping on Nextdoor hating on us.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Eileen, she'd go in there. She'd go in there like a pit bull and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't understand who you're dealing with. These people are local. This is a family-owned business. They care about our community. Let me tell you about that. Wow. And again, that whole thing and with the clean team came out of because one day I was on Nextdoor watching for this, and this is the most amazing thing. They were complaining, a bunch of neighbors were complaining about somebody that had 2 bags of trash had fallen off the back of their car and it landed in the middle of West Shore. And for 2 days, they complained about the trash, and somebody called the city, and somebody needs to get the city down here to do their job. You know what I did? I stepped on that Nextdoor app and I said, don't worry about it. We're a neighborhood business, and we're in the business of clean. I'll have my boys out there in an hour. We'll pick that trash up for you. You don't need to call the city. There is no license. There is no exclusive license on doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, in this day and time, I think that doing the right thing is the smart thing because nobody does it. And I do think that is an illustrative example about why Woodie's Wash Shack is the largest, the most profitable, with the highest number of members of any car wash in all of Greater Tampa Bay.
That's amazing. It's such an opposite approach to how these corporations have treated communities around the country. I think people are so, when any brand has more than 3 or 4 locations, it starts to get that negative corporate connotation to it. Yeah. It's such an old school way of doing business, kind of being the community man and showing up to this woman's house and having a conversation with her. You really don't hear about that anymore.
Well, you do. No.
What made you do something like that? I mean, how quickly? It sounds like you got that letter and immediately drove over there. I mean, you didn't ponder on this idea at all.
I keep going back to these references of childhood. You know, like that text I sent you. The guy asked me, "When did you think you became successful?" I said, "I think it. I think I started becoming successful from the very first time I started business. When I was a kid, 1986, my grandfather, the one that I was telling you about my education trick, that told me to go to Elon so I could say I did go to college. I didn't complete it, but he said go, and I did. He's smart. He was right. Nobody ever asked if I graduated. But when he passed away, my grandmother, they lived in a little farming community up in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And there were a lot of folks in that community that knew each other. They'd been there for generations, the Lattas and the Millers and all these different folks. My grandmother, every man in that community knew that AB had died. She never had to call anybody for anything. A carton of eggs would show up on her step. A gallon of milk would show up on her step. Mr. Latta would ride down in his pickup after work. He'd take out his lawnmower. He'd cut Miss Frances' grass. He'd rake it up. He'd put it back in his truck, and he left. The most that man ever received from my grandmother was probably a pitcher of sweet tea. She never had to ask. There was no bargain. There was no expectation. Your grandfather, I know that everybody may come back to that, but I'm going to tell you, your grandfather, I've been a big fan of his, and he's been a big fan of mine. And I'm going to tell you why. He's probably a big fan of mine. That principle resulted in the Woodies street clean team. Thinking about my grandmother, think about Mr. Latta cutting her grass without expectation of anything, because it's not charity if you expect something from it. That's the whole principle behind the thing that we own. It's part of our IP. It's called Courtesy Plus. Your grandfather was the reason I started Courtesy Plus. I had that same location. He was so elated to come in and see what I'd done, because I'd call him and thank him for the example that he'd been to me and telling stories about that old hardware store that his folks ran.
Right.
And he come out there, and he was old then. And it was hot as hell. And here I look up, and there is Dick Greco drying off his own car.
Wow.
And I was like, that's not going to stand. So I went over and I had a folding chair, and I put it in the shade. And I said, Mr. Greco, I said, Mayor, would you come over here and sit? Let me take care of that car for you. And I dried off that car. A couple of my guys came over, and they said, what are you doing? I said, I'm cleaning Mr. Greco's car because that's what we should be doing. And they said, yeah, but we're in the self-service business, Mr. Phillips. I said, oh, no, buddy. I said, the next person that says that to me, I'll probably punch them. We're not in the self-service business. We're in the business of selfless service. And there is a gulf of difference between those two things. Selfless service is doing something for someone. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where you stand on your station of life, and you do it without the expectation of return. I tell my folks, if someone comes in that looks like your grandparents, you put them on the courtesy bench and you take care of that car.
Mm.
If a lady comes in here and she is dressed to go to work, or you got a guy that's in a nice suit that doesn't look like he needs to be sweating, nobody needs to tell you what you need to do. You go have those folks sit down and you take care of that car for them. That is the thing that Woodie's is known for, it turns out. We have a fun, cheeky brand. We do crazy, irreverent, surfer-style stuff. But that's not what people like about Woodie's. What people love about Woodie's is the fact that we run it like your grandparents ran that hardware store. Our model is the Ace Hardware model. It is not the Home Depot model.
Right.
It's not the model where nobody knows anything about everything. It's somebody that knows everything about anything in that store. It's that local owner of that Ace Hardware. That's why we only trade with Ace Hardware. Mr. Phillips, we can buy that tool for $4 less. Yeah, you might. But I'm going to tell you, if it breaks, you go there and see Mr. Johnson. He's going to replace that for you. He's never going to ask a question. That's why I support Ace Hardware. And if you want people in the community to support you, buddy, that's the foot you better be standing on, because that's what people appreciate.
My grandfather all the time talks about attributing those ideals to his father. My great-grandfather is the person that owned that hardware store, and he's the one that would have people come in They couldn't afford a hammer and a pack
That's
of nails, and he'd go ahead and give it to them and say, just pay me back when the time is right.
That's right.
And all those relationships lasted for decades and decades and decades. And by the time my grandfather was old enough to get into politics, and he did, those relationships stuck around.
You never know where it's going to go. I just had the privilege, I'd say now, of watching a show about the origins of Chick-fil-A. Truett Cathy standing in his business, starving to death. He had 2 stores. One had just burned down, no insurance. And a guy walks in the back door, his food purveyor, and said, Truett, Delta Airlines, back then they had full service food on flights. And he goes, Delta Airlines just rejected cases of chicken. And it's boneless, skinless chicken breast. And he said, I don't know what to do with it. And Truett said, buddy, I can't pay you. He said, I don't know what to do with it. He said, I'm in the hamburger business. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. And he said, shoot, I don't even know how I'm going to pay you for the hamburger this week. He said, I'll tell you what you do. I'm going to lose this chicken. I'm going to leave this chicken here with you. When you get around to it, you pay me. That's where Chick-fil-A started.
God, I had no idea.
That's exactly how it started.
You know, every time I pull into a Woodie's and I have one of the workers there help me clean the vehicle, they give me a little QR code.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, if you don't mind leaving me a good review. There's a sort of incentive structure
Yeah, that's right.
you've built into this, and that performance, that selfless service is actually somehow built in. How'd you build that in? Do they get high marks, or do they get a raise, or is there a bonus they get if they get a certain number of high marks from customers?
Well, it used to be word of mouth. Why do we trade with the Greco's hardware store in Ybor? Well, word of mouth today, in my opinion, is the Google score.
Right, yeah.
So I was sitting out there. In fact, it came out of failure working that same car wash, first one. We couldn't get anything right. So we ran free car washes for 2 weeks, not because we were generous, because nobody's going to pay if they knew how bad it was. So I pulled the whole team out of the office. We went out there and we started drying and washing cars. We detailed cars. I myself personally detailed cars for 14 days straight without a break, because it was our only chance to make a first impression in the community. What that led to is that people are so blown away by the service, they perceive to be service, they started tipping people. Well, that developed a whole unseemly dynamic that I had to curtail. Let's say that I'm a Woodie's member and I'm a tightwad, and let's say that you're a Woodie's member and you're a generous guy when it comes to tipping. Well, I call it the pigeons and peanuts theory. You go over here to Publix and sit on a park bench and throw peanuts for about 2 days, you're going to have a lot of pigeon buddies. The third day, you come over there and you don't have any peanuts. You're going to have a lot of annoyed pigeons that are going to make your life miserable. And I saw that dynamic starting on my car wash. So I sat down and said, well, how can I triangulate a business decision? I'm always interested in the alignment of interest. And what I did was I came up with a thing which we filed for a patent on, trademark on, called the high five card with that QR code. And the way it works is this: when you walk, because we're all sick and tired of tipping. If I have to get asked for one more tip to get a bagel, I think I'll scream.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Hell, the tip costs more than the product.
Right.
And there was a time when the product and the service were one combined product.
Yeah.
It's not a separate bargain. So when they would come in and you ask to give them a tip, they'll hand you that card. And it goes like this: if you feel like that we have exceeded your expectation today with your car, we don't take tips. That's part of the bargain when you paid for the wash. However, for every 5-star Google review that I get, the company will tip me.
Wow.
I wanted to own that. I am fervently against socialism. We are not all equal, and we know that. There are losers and there are winners in this world, have been and always will be. When you have a tip jar, that means that 20% of the people in that operation are making that magic happen, while the other 80% are profiting from it. We don't do that. I want to know who's winning. I want to know who's losing. The other thing it did for me is it gave me a perfect keyhole perspective into what the customer thought about my wash. We have a policy in our company: if you get anything less than a 5-star Google review, you have absolutely 48 hours to either make it go away or to make that thing into a 5-star review. I am proud to tell you that as of this moment, we are the second most reviewed company in all of Tampa Bay more than the Bucks, more than the Lightning.
Company, period, not just car wash.
Period.
Whoa.
We have over 68,000, I quit counting, 70,000 reviews. I think the only people that beat us is Busch Gardens because they have millions of people come every year. I think they had, I don't know, last time I took 82, 83, 84,000, somewhere you can look it up. And not only that, but we are on a composite basis, the most reviewed and the highest scoring company on Tampa Bay. And that's not just Tampa Bay. We're the most reviewed car wash in America.
Wow.
If you count up total reviews, we get on average anywhere from, you look at the one on Gandy, I don't know how many reviews. I quit count when it hit 4,000 or 5,000. And I think Mr. has been there since that car wash was, they bought it in 2004. They might have 700 reviews now. And I don't know, they're now that we've started this, other car washes are trying to do it. Mod Wash is second. And that's only because I had some folks leave and steal it and try to do it at Mod Wash, but they've all left. So, I mean, you can look it up, but I mean, that's one of our brag points because
you've got David pulled it up here. Each location has 4, 9, 8, 2,500 reviews. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Those are
6,000
reviews.
4th Street, 7,500. Holy shit.
That's right. What's the first thing that you go and look at on Amazon when you go to
absolutely.
Yeah.
Who's buying? Well, look, there's
the second
so
thing
many
you look
different
for is the
options
negative
today.
review.
There's so many different options today.
Sure.
Why would I choose something that has a low review? You're not.
No.
And by the way, once you go down that road of low reviews, that's a long way back up to the top.
And I didn't know it. So, Harry, I mean, you got to be careful because if you try to manipulate the review and Google finds out about it, you get blackballed. If you pay a customer for review, the FCC will come get you, as they should. We don't pay customers for reviews. But here's what happens. The reason that a person will come to you and help you to some extent, because we just know the facts of life, they're looking for that tip. That pigeon's looking for that peanut.
Right.
I don't mean to equate my people with pigeons. I don't mean it like that. But I'm just talking about a general sense. The customer just wants good service, right? And I want to know who my rock stars are. So we do this. We count our reviews every single week. We vote on the best review at each car wash every single week in a blind review so that nobody knows who's voting. We read them. Everybody in our company is required to read them. All the managers are required to read them, and they're required to vote. And that individual that week gets an additional bonus. And at the end of the year, that person gets an even additional bonus if they maintain the most reviews of the year, because I'm aligning my interest with you, the customer, and with me, my crew member, to make sure that we all are getting what we want in that triangulated bargain.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Customers happy because they have good service. Essentially, your employees are working on tips, air quote. It's not a tip from the customer,
hustle,
but it's a tip from the company.
We pay for hustle.
Wow.
You hustle, you win.
Let me ask you a question. Liability.
Sure.
Because I see people pulling up at like Porsche 911s, the wife with her G-Wagon.
Sure.
It's not a touch-free car wash.
Is anything good in your life ever happened because you didn't get touched? Okay, let's just start with that.
David's like, there's a clip. But seriously, I mean, right?
I'm serious.
I'm serious too. So what do you do like in the initial onset of figuring out what type of components? You mentioned there's only 3 or 4 different companies. You feeling these different fabrics. You're a car guy, so I'm sure you paid attention to this.
Well, I don't own a car I wouldn't take through my car wash. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
You have to eat your own product. My wife, she's got a car better than mine. I drive a 1988 Grand Wagoneer because it's a Woody, baby.
Hell yeah.
With the LS3 in it, by the way. Put that 430.
I knew you put a little extra sauce into it, right?
Well, they came out with 186. I kind of slide up next to that V6 Camaro every now and then. I smoke that dude. But they don't see the old guy coming, but they see me leaving.
What one of those old Jeep Wagoneers come with? Probably
186 horsepower. 1988 was 186 horsepower.
186.
Well, let me tell you what. The easy part's dropping that 450 horsepower LS3. The other part is the brakes weren't made for that.
I learned that. Figure out how to slow this thing down.
I learned that at my second traffic light.
Holy shit. So you drop this badass vehicle.
That's all I do.
I've seen this vehicle around. This is sort of like the little
1980.
mascot for Woodies. Hence
Well,
the
that's one of
name.
them. Well, that's one of them. No, the actual mascot, that's an 88. The actual mascot is a 19...
Where's that little Hot Wheels car?
Yeah, bring me that blue shirt over there, David. There's a blue shirt with a QR code.
And the little Hot Wheels car. I think
Yeah,
it's in
there's a
the
Hot
back.
Wheels car. Well, the true Woody, and by the way, everybody's like, why did you spell it that instead of a Y? But the true Woody, oh yeah, you'll get a kick out of this. Is this your camera over here I'm looking at? All right, let me know where I'm looking.
It's got the QR
All right,
code
so
on it.
that's a Woody. Now, if y'all focus on that, that's actually a QR code. That's a sly trick there. See, we're triangulating the business solution right here, right in front. This is happening right in front of you here. You just click on that, and that's going to take you right to the old Woody's website right there. There you go. All right. But you take that. That's a 40. I don't know if that's what year that is.
This is a 1940s Woody.
40s, yeah. So they made them up into the last one was made in 1950. They're actually furniture. And they'd buy the chassis and they'd send it off to a furniture plant and they'd literally build the car around this thing.
That's so crazy.
The reason for that goes all the way back to the why proposition, because it's part of building out what I've always wanted to do, which is lifestyle brand. Lifestyle brands are very sticky. And that's what you want. You want to reduce the churn. Otherwise, what happens, it's just a race for the bottom. I've never been that efficient. We charge a premium. We charge more than anybody else does for a car wash. I'm the first to admit that. If you want to go find the cheapest one, I'll help you find one. I can tell you where all the cheap ones are. In that case, I'm not sure I'd take my car through it, but that's your choice. That's what cheap gets you. But the Woody itself, I have a 46. We have a parade car, 1946. That's the one we used at the St. Pete Grand Prix, shoot the T-shirts and stuff out of. Then we have a 47 Chevy. We have a 47 Ford. And then we have some what we call 10 Woodies, which is what happened after 1950. And that's your old Country Squire station wagons, the Grand Wagoneers like I drive daily, and things of that sort. And it is around all of that, the stores. If you look at these are the wagons here. I own several of those, and Seal Surfboard. And the reason that car is associated with surfing is because back in the late 50s or mid 50s, kind of the golden era of surfing in California, everybody was tired. They come back from World War II. Everybody's making money now. The country's on a roll. And their furniture, you have to varnish the car. Okay. Yeah. Well, people are busy. They don't get time to go varnish a car. And so they started ditching them. And nobody had thought about the concept of a surfboard rack. So these kids would buy them for 20, 30, 40 bucks. You could put a lot of kids in them. Kids didn't have any money. They put a lot of kids in them. They stick their surfboard. You'll see surfboards sticking out of the back of them is how it really started. Eventually they put them on top. But they had all it was the van. The vans hadn't been created back then. They didn't with the van. And that is the reason that the Woodie Wagon, and by the way, Woodie is the proper spelling of that, not with a Y. Y is like Woody Harrelson's a man's name. But that's how that came associated with surfing. And then around that came the Beach Boys. A bunch of kids sitting around. They didn't have any money. They couldn't really talk about anything else. And they just, in fact, I've listened to Dick Dale and some of those guys talking about how it came about. We're a bunch of kids sitting around with a guitar, nothing to do. We just start singing about what we love. We love girls. We love surfing. And I started thinking about that with car wash. That there's a lot of alignment there.
Yeah.
Sun, fun, sand, shine, water, all those elements fit together. And I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. I'm staring at a lifestyle brand.
Ah.
And that's where this whole thing started. That's where the Woodie Wagon started. And by the way, Garrett, you're the first person that's ever interviewed me that's asked that question.
Where did the
Woody come from? Why Woody? And that's it. But when you start think about this. I don't know who Tommy is. Who cares? I don't know who Fat Daddy or Big Dan or whatever his name is.
Who are you talking about?
Big Dan Car Wash. The number one car wash when I got into business 5 years ago was car wash. That doesn't make you want to get up and think about washing your car.
You know about Big Dan?
Big Dan is a competitor out of Atlanta. They got stores here. Nobody knows who it is, and nobody cares. It's a name.
Right.
It has got to be relevant. It's got to be associated with the product. Yeah. Yeti is a Himalayan Sasquatch. Their tagline is wildly colder.
Right.
the connotation is outdoors. It's adventure. That's why people put that sticker on their car.
Yes.
You know, you never see anybody riding around in a car with a Dell sticker on it, but you see a lot of Apple stickers. Why? Because it's become a lifestyle brand.
So it started with the vehicle.
Car washing is about cars.
Right.
It's not about Big Daddy or Big Dan or Tommy.
You've implemented this fun Florida sunshine surfer.
Now, when you center focus on the car, when you start with that car,
yeah,
it's everything around that car that becomes the lifestyle. It had its own music. The Beach Boys, Dick Dale, Jan and Dean. It became escapism. There's something in all of us that says, you know what? You're talking about, you got kids, you got the wife, you got the pressure. We've been talking about, I can't do what I used to do. But, buddy, there's something in every one of us that says, I want to go sit on a beach. I want to be a surfer. I want to check out. I just want to watch sunsets and sunrises. I want to live in flip-flops. Jimmy Buffett built an entire brand over that. Mm-hmm. Flip-flops, Margaritaville.
Yep.
The number one fan club for Jimmy Buffett was where? Columbus, Ohio.
Really?
Why? Because they're sitting there freezing their buns off, and all they can think about is getting to Key West, the smell of coconut, the taste of a margarita. When you're going through that life of silent desperation at that keyboard, go look at the screensavers, palm trees, old Woody sitting on the beach. It's escapism. And that's what we do. We've taken a chore and turned it into a pleasurable experience. It's a little oasis. It's a little oasis in the normal, humdrum life of most of us, that in that moment, you can go to that place and accomplish two things. You get your job done, which is car washing, but you have the most pleasurable experience. We have a lady here who was married to one of the most important people societally in our city, and we'll leave her nameless. She called me up one day and said, Mr. Phillips, I go to your car wash every day. And I said, why do you do that? She says, I love to see happy people, and it makes me feel good. And she says, when I'm feeling bad, I just go to Woodie's. And I said, I can't tell you how much that means to me. Because I said, that's exactly the thought that I had when I was sketching this thing out on a napkin.
You have nailed it, sir. I go there all the time. Every weekend I show up, and it's a sort of ritual, might be the word. Maybe that's the wrong word, but there's something about going through your car wash, pulling up, you get it clean, the people are smiling, you give it a nice little shine. You must put something in the soap, because when you drive through, all of a sudden your whole car starts to smell good.
Yeah.
That was probably intentional too, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. You know,
I want to
you
get
have
to
five
that.
senses.
I want to get to that too.
Look at
every
this.
piece
Look what you're
of
holding
this.
on to here. You know the decision makers are. The decision makers are children, and I'm going to tell you why. While you and I are sitting here talking, your wife is having to deal with how many kids? Yeah. And that woman's out there somewhere, or I don't know that this is true, but we just think about the people that are listening to this that are married, that got a couple kids, squalling in the back seat,
Right.
bumping around in the mother trucker, right? Sick and tired of listening to Disney tracks. I was there. I got 5 kids. My kid, Nuggy, has got a mouth about the size of a pie plate. It's about that big around. And I noticed that when we would go make my McDonald's, Daddy, I want to go to McDonald's. We go to McDonald's. It wasn't about that cheesy hamburger. It wasn't about them fries. It's about that toy in the bottom of that bag. We've collected every troll, every Star Wars figure, everything. I got to thinking about that. That your wife, usually, the women are usually the person that makes a decision for where they get the car wash. True fact. She's in there dealing with them squalling kids. And you got little Johnny back there who just got a beach ball from Woodie's. Do you think that dude cares that Mister is selling the platinum XRT double carbon fiber whatever? No. Nobody cares about that. That kid wants to go to Woodie's because he gets a beach ball at Woodie's, and it's on brand and its own theme.
I'm laughing because you have my son trained. Every
Absolutely.
time we drive on Gandy and he goes, go to the blue car wash. He's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Why does he want to go to the blue car wash?
Oh.
Because first of all, it's a light show. I have a video of him staring up at the ceiling,
Yeah.
looking at all the lights. And then we get out, and then she gets him a fun beach ball. And then to top it all off, he gets a popsicle.
Yeah.
So every time my wife puts him in the car, he wants to go to the dang car wash. And because I can go every day and I have a membership, my wife literally goes every day because our son wants to go.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting ready to wreck your life.
And by the way, we have like 15 of these things.
Take all you want.
I was like, he might appreciate the fact we have so many, because my wife will go to the park. She'll bring one of these. All the kids start to play with it. Half the time we end up leaving it at the park. And I was like, babe, that's free advertising. He probably loves that fact.
I got another one for you. My old buddy Dick Lazare. I love Dick Lazare. He used to started Lazare Yachts. One of the smartest guys I ever met. He's on it. And he is also an amazing artist. Like, I've never seen anybody can draw so fast, so accurately. It's kind of like Chip Foose, if you ever watched Chip Foose draw a car. Just brilliant. I mean, just unbelievable. And we were having a meeting one day, and Dick's sitting there just listening. He's drawing. I'm like, oh my God, look at that guy draw. He could draw these beautiful yachts. He drew them all, pinned them all himself. Genius guy. And I said, Dick, can you draw a car? Oh yeah, I'll draw a car. Boom, perfect car. Oh my God. And I said, I got this idea. Again, back to Nuggie. Nuggie was going up to the Pepin Academy. He's a special needs kid. And Woodies. Nuggie's all Woodies, Team Woodies, giving out stuff to kids at school. So these kids in the school were getting fired up on Woodies. And I said, Dick, do you remember when we were kids, Disney had this thing called Herbie the Love Bug. It's a little VW, and the kids loved it. I loved it. And I said, I want to do Herbie the Love Bug, but I got an idea for a hook. Car washes, we recycle about 75% of our water, which is good for the environment. And I'm moving on to using rainwater, which we get a lot of,
right,
in my car wash, because the big deal right now is stormwater runoff, things of that sort. And the reason I'm doing that is because, number one, it's the right thing to do, but it's also people care about their environment. And I want to teach kids in our community to be better marine stewards so that we'll always have a healthy bay, because we live around this body of water and we need to take care of it. How can I convince children not to throw crap in the storm sewer? So I said, I know what my kid likes. He likes to color. So Dick sat down and we storyboarded out, and I wish I had it with me, and created a color book about Woody and his fishy friends. And basically the story is that you are coloring your way through these steps about how Woody, the cute little Woody car, prevents bad things from happening to his fishy friends. And that kid is sitting there, and he's coloring that thing. And in the back of that coloring book is what? A QR code for a free car wash at Woody's. And I'm going to tell you, that kid comes home with that book. You're going to Woody's Wash Shack. And we have an amazing return. We give away free car washes like that. I got this idea from the food court in the mall, where you walk through there and it's always the Chinese food guy. I don't know why, but he's got a little piece of pork or something on a toothpick.
Right.
And a guy like me, who loves to eat, evidently, he ever tastes that chicken, we're going to go in there and buy the whole buffet.
Yeah.
And when you've got a good product, you got a good service, you want to get people just to come try it.
Right.
We put a QR code. We went up here and I talked to the Donovan brothers. They're just amazing. You ought to get them on your show. You talk about rags to riches, Horatio Alger story. But they run the Chick-fil-A down there on Gandy. And two quick pieces of that. I wanted to get the first Gandy car wash pumping. So I went to him and I said, hey, I want to put a little real estate yard sign like in your drive-through, and just put a QR code, and for your customers, offer them a chance to get a free car wash, $24.99 value, free car wash, So they said, yeah, do it. Oh, man, thank you so much. Of course, people told me for 2 months, they'll never do it. They'll never do it. I was like, did you ever ask?
Right.
Back to the,
Yep.
Man, we'd love to do it. Garrett, I quit counting when I had 14,000 people come
14,000?
people visit us because they went to that Chick-fil-A.
You don't think about, I'm giving away too much.
Sure I did. Oh, my accountants told me, Mr. Phillips, you give away $1.5 million, whatever.
Do the math on 14,000 car washes.
But
Chinese food.
That car wash has got about 9,000 members.
But that sample, man, you tried that General Tso's chicken.
I'm telling you. You're on it like you own it, baby.
You have a bite of that, you're like, all right,
give
me the plate.
Let's do it. I'm going to sit there and eat that whole thing.
Holy shit. And
so it's like that. I mean, you got to get people to come to your business.
I remember when you were gearing up and when the whole thing started. So Gandy was the first one, right?
The very first car wash was one that I bought over on 66 in Pinellas Park called Mount Washmore. Great attempt at branding. But a major miss because they based it on the national park theme, and they forgot, I guess, the reason that they use brown, taupe, and green is because they don't want you to see it, and you couldn't see it, and nobody showed up. And so when we came along with Woodies, and by the way, all of our colors, every color you have, the very first thing I did was I sat down and created a brand book. I knew what I wanted, and then I sat down and stylized that little Woody right there, the Speed Woody. And all of my fonts, there's 93 fonts associated between the golden age of surfing between 1957 and 1964 because it's defined by the music genre of that time. In 64, the Beach Boys. And that died when the British invasion and Jimi Hendrix and all that destroyed good music. That's a joke. But that was the end of it. But that Woodies right there, that came off one of the oldest surf shops. That font came off one of the oldest called Bird Surf Shop in San Diego. All Wash Shack, and all those colors, there are 5 major brand colors, and they are all car colors between their color codes, they call them with cars, between 57 and 64, and that's why it's authentic.
Very cool. I wanted to ask you about, you kind of had like these girls doing these promotions and bikinis on the beach. You had like a cheerleading crew early on.
We call them brand ambassadors now, Garrett.
What did I say? Brand ambassador. Now, the marketing part of this is so freaking huge. I mean, the cars, the Hot Wheels, the brand ambassadors, all of it is so intentional. And when you're doing this deck, when we're doing these logos, I asked you earlier about kind of the pace of all this stuff. Were you focused on this brand and the font and the color and the fun, all this fun sort of stuff to draw people in before you started doing the numbers on this? You know, before you really started to talk to the accountants? Because all the people that you talk to that don't have creative vision are going to tell you it's not going to work. Just like you've described with your accountants, et cetera.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. One, not completely because I was, just an idiot. But if you go back to what I first started this with, is that one of the converging elements of this, while I was trying to figure out how to take this big 1031 and get it from that great big lump 1031 down into something that I could manage. And so I've spread it out. About the time that I started in this, well, one of the things was Trump was in for the first term, and he passed the 2017 Jobs Act. And in there, he took every real estate asset that was 15-year depreciation schedule or less and made that bonus depreciable. What that means is convenience stores, gas stations, car washes, the vast majority of those facilities are equipment. And so Trump very smartly, because he's a business guy, knew that in order to get manufacturing back, Obama used to joke him, well, you're going to snap your fingers, get manufacturing back. No, you got to create a way for manufacturing to come back. And the way you got it to come back, again, alignment of interest, was that he knew that you and I, being entrepreneurial real estate developers, if we would buy things because we were incentivized that had a lot of equipment associated with them, it would then bring the manufacturing capability back. Mm-hmm. So car washes are about 50% equipment. Vacuum hoses, all that stuff, all the equipment inside, the equipment upstairs, chemical equipment, all that stuff. So, for instance, if I built a car wash, let's say it cost $7 million under that program then, which just came out of committee again, they're going to do it again, which is awesome. Then say you have a $7 million car wash, for simple math, say that you have $1 million of a dirt, and we know that you can't depreciate dirt. The moment I would get CO, that is, as the IRS defines it as in service, the moment I would get a certificate of occupancy, I'd write that entire car wash off. I wrote off $73 million in 2 years of depreciation. And what I did in that one trick, for lack of a better term, was I took that great big, huge tax liability that I had. And rather now from having to push that into another 1031, I was able, because of accelerated depreciation, to do somewhat of the similar thing and spread that out across all these car washes, which are now kind of like postage stamp. Let's call it bite size. So you don't have to buy the whole cake, or the whole pizza. You just get a slice, so to speak, and it's more digestible financially. Now we'll talk about why I live in Puerto Rico now for a different reason, but because there's three steps to the magic trick. But anyway, that was another one of the reasons that I got into it. So once those things started converging, I just knew instinctively that the car wash business was profitable. Everybody knows that, because they watch Breaking Bad. They just think there's all this money in it. But so I knew that. And I also knew that if I stopped and really thought about the enormity of what I was doing, that I probably wouldn't do it. I mean, Garrett, when I tell you that I don't think that I've ever had a vision in business come to me as crystal clear as this one, that's the God's honest truth. When I tell you that it hit me like a lightning bolt, I mean, it hit me in the top of the head and it went all the way to my toes. I knew in that moment. I mean, it's kind of funny to say because, you talk to people. I'm 59 years old. I'm not, I'm an old guy, according to my kids, But I was like, oh, my God. It
visceral, like you actually felt it.
It was like seeing God.
Wow.
I mean, it just opened up to me like that.
Wow.
Because it was all the things that I wanted in my life, and there it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
And it changes
Where
lives.
are you at now? How many locations do you have?
Yeah, right now we got 16. We got 2 under construction. We got a third getting ready to start here in about 60 days.
I know you've worked a few, something like that with Joe Fall. Joe Fall was actually early on. At the time, like my biggest guest, I was so excited to talk to him, and I need to have him back on. He was a fantastic guest. David, do you remember him? That was before you were number 6. Was that really episode 6? Holy shit.
What are you on now? What episode are you on now? Holy God.
134.
Good for you, brother. Good for you.
Keeping it cranking, just I'm enjoying
Every
it,
day.
having fun. I like talking to people
happen.
like you, and I draw so much from this show. It's so valuable to me to talk to a guy
well,
like
these
you.
are the stories, because that's what we're all looking for. The answers to the mystery of life. They're all around us.
Holy shit. So you've got
So we're at
down
16.
to Sarasota.
Yeah, we're down to Nokomis there. We're moving on out. We've got 16. We've got a potential to without giving away trade secret, whatever that is. We have a number of acquisitions that are clear and present, and I think we'll be at 31 here over the next 18 to 24 months.
31.
Yeah, we're getting ready to double size the company.
Fantastic. And you own all the real estate too.
Every bit of it.
And because of that, you can take advantage of these certain nuances in the tax code.
Well, they screwed it up. The real smart kids from New York come down, the PE guys, they're always the geniuses. And they don't like real estate because they see it as a drag on the balance sheet because they see, well, it's only we can sell it and get for 6% return, take all that money and, we can make 20, 30% on the operations. Well, yeah, you can. Until you realize that you've sold your real estate at the top of the market for $10 million. You don't know squat about operating a car wash. And those two things come together and they pinch your head. And that's why you just saw Driven Brands out of Charlotte have about a $2 billion write-down and just dispose of over 400 car washes because it's eating them alive and they got to get out.
What's the future thinking, maybe end game here? I mean, is this thing a nationwide brand you'd like to build out? Is there an exit strategy involved?
Yeah, there's always just 3 natural ways to get out. Number one is that you keep it moving. I pass it on to folks like you. That's what's happening right now. You got to have enough sense to get out of the way. I don't be creaking around there at 75-year-old yelling at people staying off the grass. And so you got to get out and then also you got to realize that I'm an idea guy. I'm a promoter. There's things I'm good at, and the best thing if you can pull this trick off is realize what you're not good at and get the hell away from it. I always tell people if something's hurting, just stop it. It's not real bright.
Yeah.
And so we've got Paul now is our COO. He's a bright child. He's 39, 40 years old. He just won. In fact, as we're going tomorrow, I got an award. He just won CFO of the year.
Wow.
And that picture up there of me, it looks like an old high school picture.
I was
They
going to
keep pulling
say,
that. Well, I had Wolfman
pulled
Jack
a
up
photo
there.
out of the old yearbook, it looks like.
No,
here.
they do. The kids do it. I've got one. I told them, I said, you put Wolfman Jack up there, who I always like because he's also on brand, on theme for this era.
Right.
And we can't do that. I said, well, you just put something else up there. And so they stuck that thing. I think that was from the Expressway Authority about 12 years ago. But I don't look anything like that.
Well, you look
but
damn
Paul
good.
here on the left just won CFO of the year. And he was 16-year veteran of KKR, Colberg, Kravis, and Roberts. You don't hang around 16 years up there unless you're a hustler. Randy Nichols right here. That's the hub. That's the Jesus nut of the operation as far as I'm concerned. He runs the whole field. And I'd like to also just make this very, very important statement, and I mean this sincerely, and my people know this. The most important person in our business is undoubtedly the customer, because without that, you're just running an expensive social club that nobody wants to be part of. But the second most important person is the person that's closest to the customer. And that's my people in the front line. Everything from here up, in fact, I've told them to reverse this chart. This chart is an affront to me because that chart should be the other way. The office jobs only exist because of these people here. When you come to our office, and if I'm around, and one of our crew members, and I don't care what station in our business you're required to stand to your feet out of respect for those people. Those people get up at 6 a.m. You're required to be there a half an hour early to get ready for your day. You don't get there at opening time. No, we don't promote people to get there at opening time. That's the requirement. But the expectation is you're early, you got your stuff together, and you're ready for that first customer. It's the last person that leaves that site. It's the person that stands under that 105-degree thermonuclear explosion every day with a smile on their face with sweat dripping off of them. It's why, for the first time, I'm back doing what I really like to do. This isn't a show. I worked at a car wash this morning because if you want to be with your people, you've got to be among your people. And I might drive a Bentley from time to time, but when I do, I pull into my car wash and I head straight for the bathroom. And there's a lot of symbolism in that. Number one, if you're a mother of your child and you go into a business that has a dirty bathroom, you pack up your stuff and you leave, because if they don't care about that, they don't care about anything. In the alternative, if that bathroom is nice, if somebody cares enough about their bathroom, and this came from my mother, they care about everything in that business, because the way, and I said this before, the way that you do anything is the way that you do everything in life. That speaks volumes. That's what defines you. I spend $25,000 on the interior of my bathrooms. Your baby gets changed on a stainless steel changing table, not that little plastic crap that you find at the mall. We have the best equipment in our bathrooms. We put murals in there. All of them are air conditioned, because I think it's important to people to know that we care enough. When I pull up at a car wash, regardless of what I'm driving, the first thing I do is I go check that bathroom. And if it's dirty, we get everybody in there to have a little meeting. And I get down on my knees and I take this rag right here and I wash that toilet till it sparkles, baby. I've been doing it all my life, because in that moment, something else magical has happened. My people know that there is not a single thing that I would ever ask of them that I'm not willing to do myself. And if you are willing to be a servant to your own people, they will walk through walls for you. And that is why we have the best people in the entire business. If you're going to be in the car wash business, there is only one place to be, and that's Woodie's Wash Shack. If you're an aerodynamist or you are an aeronautical engineer, if I was, you would have to pay me 10 times the amount of money to work for Boeing these days as you would to work for Elon Musk, because those boys are breaking and failing fast. because they're learning fast. Isn't it a tragedy that a 747 that has been built every year since 1968, Boeing was cut that contract for the presidential 747 in 2017 when Trump was in office, and they estimate it'll be the year 27 to 29 before they get another one out the door.
Mm-hmm.
What a joke. But at Woody's, we are more like SpaceX, drawing that parallel again, because I have never fired anybody for trying.
Mm-hmm.
That's you get rewarded for trying.
So how do you see new hires at that sort of, can I just say, maybe ground floor level, right? The people standing out in the sun. Do you find people that have a solid foundation of morals and character and then build them up? I mean, there must be a certain leash you can extend to find someone and mold them into the Woody's employee you hope they can be. Are you seeing them?
Well, I think you make them. You know, I think there's many examples of this, and it's not just, you know, it's certainly not at Woody's. I mean, I've just emulated what other people are doing.
Right.
But it's part nurture, and then, you know, sad to say, part of it's nature.
And part getting on your knees and showing
Well,
them
you
that
got to
you're
be
willing to do it too.
You have to be. You know, if how can you run a business if you're not in your business? We had a HR guy once. We have a requirement in our business, and we've had a little come to Jesus on this too, because we've gotten slack. And the requirement in our business, well, let's just say it's not a requirement. I don't know if that's legally possible, but you know, I'm like Santa Claus. I'm everywhere, so I'm watching. And I learned this from Herb Keller. I was on a Southwest flight once. Herb's the founder. Beautiful story. And Herb was pushing drinks on a Southwest flight, and that struck me. And I had a moment with him, which is another story for another day. But that resonated with me. And that man could be anywhere. That man could be flying in his own Gulfstream, but he's back there schlepping drinks in the back of a Southwest. And I've had examples. I've just pulled, again, these are just these little flashes of light in this kaleidoscope of life that I've gone through. And that just resonated with me. And I find that I have more in common with those people than I do with anybody in my office. I didn't go to school. I lived in my car. I worked for minimum wage. I was told, we don't pay you to think. I dealt with sacred cows. I dealt with family businesses. We don't have that at Woody's. There's no sacred cows at Woody's. My children, if they want a piece of this business, they start out in the same place. I got 2 nephews that work in the business, and I'm twice as hard on them, and expect 3 times as much as I do anybody else, because they wear my name.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we roll.
I'm making so many connections to other entrepreneurs too that have that same mindset. I remember Joe Lopano, I guess he'd be the former CEO of Tampa International Airport.
Good man.
Man, he said the same thing about picking up trash. Like, he himself would go on walks and pick up trash and make sure that every employee at Tampa International saw him do that, so that when they saw trash, they would feel inspired to pick it up too. And look at the success of that organization.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, what a leader. Joe's an awesome guy. Tremendous amount of respect for him. And compare him to the former administrator. Let's just say it. You know, look what happened. Look what happened to that operation. I had a funny thing happen to me the other day. Got married again. That's the good news.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my God, she's amazing. I told her the other day, I said, honey, I wish I'd have met you 20 years ago. She said, honey, you'd met me 20 years ago. You'd be wearing an ankle bracelet.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. She sounds
no,
funny.
I don't know. She's hilarious. But no, you know, she had a girlfriend out the other day, and she collects the most beautiful friend. My God, I don't know how she does it, but she got the most beautiful friends. Like, I collect cars, you know. I think she's testing me. But and I'm passing too. I'm staying strong. But I was listening to this gal, and it reminded me a little bit of a Woody story. And we were talking to her about, she's gorgeous. I mean, gosh, looks like she's cut out of glass. She's gorgeous, perfect, and super sweet. And it's not just her, it's many others. And I hear this constantly. I can't find a man. I can't find a man. I can't find a man. And I said, well, where are you shopping? You know? And I said, every time I look at you, you know, you're on a yacht or something. And I said, I don't know. That's, where you're going to find the man of your dream. You're going to find a man. I'm not sure that's the dreamy one. That's the one that's behind the camera. And, went through this whole list of stuff. I got to thinking about that. And if I was a young woman looking for a man, I went on a date. The last thing I'd be asking myself is, do you have a Lamborghini? I'd want a man that was walking with me that would humble himself to bend over and pick up a piece of litter. I was on the way to a meeting yesterday, and I saw a guy take a styrofoam cup, as my son is my witness, Cooper. He goes to UT, and had a plastic spoon in it. Dropped the cup out the window at the traffic light, threw the spoon out. If I'd had about another 10 minutes, I'd have picked that up and I'd chase that dude down. I'd thrown it back through his window. Mm-hmm. I make it my business wherever I am to pick things up off the ground and throw them in the trash can, because people are always watching. Mr. Greco, we're in the business of clean. And as a person, we should be in the business of courtesy. This is our community. If I was a young lady, those are the things that I'd be looking at, because if you're trying to find Mr. Right, if you wait until he's Mr. Ripe, you're probably going to miss that train. I want to know about the character of a man, and it doesn't take much to demonstrate that. Give me a guy riding around in a burned out Sentra that's clean, with a clean interior, that presents himself well, conducts himself well, and bends over to pick up a piece of trash. That's the man that I want in my life.
Do you have daughters of those 5 children?
I do. Oh, no, they're not old enough yet, not that I'm aware of. I do have a daughter, 17-year-old daughter.
You have one daughter.
One daughter.
4 boys.
And she's crazy. And when yours gets to be 13 years and one day, they go completely nuts.
Oh, Lord.
But no, I'm just joking.
There's a little hill they crawl over, right?
Yeah.
One day they wake up and...
Yeah. They're too smart. That's the thing.
What's going on? We can kind of close this up. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. This has been great. Over here at the corporate office, right down the street, that real estate's for sale.
Yeah, Woodie's moved from that location. They got too big. I incubated them in there, and then I kicked them out of the nest the first of the year, and so they're now on the corner, more or less, of Lois and Boy Scout.
Lois and Boy Scout up in West Shore.
And you Spruce and Lois.
Was this your project down here?
No. That was what they call Crescent Legacy before the bankruptcy. I bought the 11,000 square feet at the bottom of it.
What year did you buy?
2007.
Interesting. I mean, that's a lot of real estate office
it's a great spot. It's probably one of the
killer
best
location.
Oh God, the views. My office. You come to my office. It's right there, and it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
And now you're leasing out the former Woodie's office there.
Well, I had, going back to one of Don's, brutal journey exercises. When the 2008 downturn, I had 55 people in there. We're doing about 3,000. I think we were one time we're the 11th largest developer of multifamily in the nation. They said we were, at least. I don't know. But we were just in the business of fast nickels. I'm in the business of slow dimes now. But we were just doing an awful lot, but I really wasn't making a lot. I looked good. I thought I did. And
in your message, you said you had the boat and the
jet. I had it all. God had a jet. I was 38 years old. I thought I owned Tampa.
Big baller.
Oh, boy. But, that jet turned into a lawn dart in about 2008, and I ended up in a rental house with a woman that probably didn't like me too much, with 2 squalling kids, and cutting grass for my neighbor to try and buy milk money. And but it's the way it goes back to this thing you said earlier. Maybe there was more opportunity then. I don't fall victim to that. There's more opportunity today than there's ever been. When I was growing up, my dad couldn't find money. We didn't have a banking system like we did today. We didn't have the internet. You didn't have the opportunity to do what you're doing here today.
You're right.
And it doesn't matter, Garrett, what era you were born in. What if you had to live through the Great Depression? What if you were born in the middle of World War I? What if you were born in Ukraine right now? It don't matter. That isn't your choice. Your choice is what you're going to do about it. Elon Musk was born in South Africa. I've been to South Africa. I've been there since 1993.
Yeah.
That place is on fire. They're killing you for the color of your skin over there. and look what he's done.
I've been to South Africa too, and I've been to many places around the
Oh,
world.
go to Zimbabwe.
And
Oh my
if
God, what a
people are
train wreck.
confused about the opportunities we have in this
Oh,
country, they
I'm
really need to
sick of it.
travel. The only thing I mean is price. I mean, I'm an aspiring
Yeah.
developer. I've got a project going on. I own a couple buildings here in Tampa that I own and manage, and it's just so damn expensive to get a head start. Not a
Well,
head
be
start.
careful.
It's so expensive to start, period.
Well, that's true. That's true. And
It's
it's more regulatory environment. I will say that. I've had a guy come to me once. He said, "Mr. Phillips, I know you're in the car wash business, and he thinks I'm successful just because I got 2 more nickels than him, I guess. But I want to start a detailing business." I went down to the city to help him, and all we want to do is to put up a tent on the side of the road so that he could just detail cars. It required 7 permits. That's unconscionable. They'd have the fire marshal come out and inspect. It's ridiculous. It's out of control. I mean, they need to take Doge and just replicate that thing times 10 in every aspect of government.
It's a weird balance though, because it's life safety and there's so many.
Yeah.
Well, but it is though, right? They're
Well, it
looking
is
out for the building code and the fire marshal
well,
and this and that.
Marco Rubio used to say, Marco, and he used to drive his wife's minivan up here and have, I was pretty involved in politics at one time, really in writing checks and organizing meetings. But he used to say, we keep on and we're going to have the cleanest, most unemployed nation on the planet. Yeah, it does. But, this gets back to failing. And you make things just safe enough, you won't be able to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, life is a risk. You get up every day. You can't prevent pancreatic cancer. You can't prevent a glioblastoma. There's just a lot of things you can't prevent. And because if you do, well, then there's just not going to be any life. Half a life is death.
Yeah.
So it's just part of it.
Well, I think what overregulation does more than anything is it stifles what makes America unique.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is creativity and bold thinkers and risk takers, right? These are the people that have made the inventions. And I mean, I had Vinnick on the show and him talking about the decision he made when he built out Water Street. He didn't have to spend the money to do those mature trees and the sidewalk. I mean, it's like that was all. And by the way, the only reason that was done was sort of a special relationship with the city and county government. I mean, largely a lot of that stuff was against the code.
Jeff Vinnick has been one of the most important people to come to the city for other reasons you mentioned a whole lot more than anybody. I've been on more boards and paint and economic development. We're trying to just find one tenant to build an office building. Jeff Vinnick comes along and just changes the face of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that I know you've had on, and I admire the heck out of him because he's going to finish it, is Daryl Shaw. And we can't punish those people. I remember when Don Wallace lived here, and a guy that I just don't have much regard for at all, and thank God he's not running our city anymore, is John Dienfelder. And I remember we had a water shortage, and he made a big deal to beat his chest about how much water Don Wallace's house, that's owned by the Amelie oil guy, was using. Now, Don was paying for all that water, okay? He wasn't getting a free ride, but Dienfelder got on this kick about he's overusing his allocation. It's just so much of this crap we hear about today in politics. Let's punish the rich. Be very freaking careful with that because one day, and I told him, if you keep on with this, it's going to happen. And I don't know if it was this reason or another reason, but one day, Mr. Wallace packed up his stuff and left. And he didn't just leave. When he left, he took all of his charitable donations with him.
Mm-hmm.
He took all of that other stuff that he was doing because he loved Tampa. He started with one little RV up there on Florida Avenue on his daddy's gas station and built the largest RV sales ever, Lazy Days. You be very careful what you do with those people because if but for Jeff Vinnick, ain't no politician ever built a part of this city in the way that Jeff Vinnick did. Your grandfather was an amazing promoter and promoted the city. But those people, capital is like water. It goes with gravity, and capital goes to where it's most appreciated. And you don't appreciate that guy. He'll just pack that money up and take it with him. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jeff Vinnick I don't know how profitable that venture was. Uh, I, I hope he made a ton of money. I don't know, but it won't matter. And I think things like Jeff, I think what Mr. Shaw is going to do, I'm happy to have just been a little piece of that. Um, and my hat is off to those men for doing what they've done. And I think, like with this silly little car wash, those things are the closest chance that people like you and me and those men have to immortality. Um, when you pass from this earth in about 5 years, nobody knows who you are. They pack up all your crap in a little box and they go put it in storage, and one day they throw that away. All of those great moments in your life, all the victories, whoever you were, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that's there, that's left, in my mind, are two things. The legacy that you built that's enduring in the form of a business, maybe Woodie's, certainly Water Street. For sure, what's going to happen to Ebor if Mr. Shaw keeps breathing long enough. And the very last thing is the thing that you have and you owe a huge debt of gratitude to, and that's your name. I feel so bad now, coming full circle in this conversation, for those young men that started out with rich, wealthy families that never were able to add to their family's name. And I am so glad for the challenges that my family had. These people who were nothing for generations, I've made more money in my life than probably everybody before me in my Phillips lineage. And as a result of that, I owe more. I owe more to that name. I can't think of a worse thing for a young man when he's coming along to hear the words, "You had a sorry dad." And I will tell you, the greatest thing that ever came from my father's death, I think now looking back on it, men would literally go on a pilgrimage to find me and tell me, "Your father was a good man. He was one of my greatest friends. If there is anything I can ever do for you, here's my number." And I think that's the greatest thing that we can leave behind for our children and leave behind for our community. Not only is it the right thing, it's the smart thing.
That's a beautiful lesson to learn, and I certainly feel that way. The weight
Yeah.
of that name and the way people talk about my grandfather, we are so lucky to have him around still at 93 this year.
Amazing guy.
It's a long way to make
Yeah.
it, and he's
Well, I
still
know.
as hilarious as ever.
And he's just as, in his mind, remember this as we all age, because right now it's not weighing on you yet. It can't, but it will when you see a lot less of the runway in front of you. I think about that now. People ask me, "Don, you're 59 years old. Why are you hustling so hard?" I mean, I'm in the middle of a capital raise. I've never taken a dime of equity. Well, okay, let's just get that out. I started this car wash. I believed in it this much, and I don't think this is the way most people do it, and most people can't. But I put $63 million in this car wash. I mean, it's public knowledge. I have $180 million in debt I took on, swearing I'd never do that again. But I believed in it that much. And the last thing I wanted to do was to then lose people's money. And because that is the worst feeling in the world, is to live under the debt, is under the weight of that. And for the first time now, we're going through a capital raise because we're going to double this thing, and we're raising between $15 to $25 million. The difference is going to be how many of these acquisitions come to fruition that we're working on. And I knew that this day would come, and so back at the beginning of Woodie's, I had my 3 highest performing car washes. Well, they were my first 3, really. Skyway Marina, 66, and West Shore Gandy. And I hypothecated. That is, I took some of my own equity in there, not because I needed somebody else's equity. And I invited some people that I had a lot of admiration for. The truth of it is, your grandfather, I know I can use his name because he's put it in my deck as a referral, which I do appreciate. I appreciate very much, Mr. Greco. And I insisted that we pay them a quarterly return, and I projected that we would have a mid-teen return, and they had a formula. They could call it out. It was 10x on the EBITDA of the company. We called it. And we put some other funny provisions in there I won't go into, but we just went through, and those were store-level equity. And then once the company, the overall entity level company had real value, we just went through a deal where we had 21 of those people. I would not let anybody invest more than $100,000 each, because if it went sideways, I wanted to be able to pay them out and preserve my reputation. So some would invest in every one because they wanted to get 300 in. Well, I'm proud to say, and this is one of my greatest achievements, is that just a couple months ago, I went out and called all those folks, put them in a room, and I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are now going to go to the next level. And those of you that want to cash out, I'm going to pay you out. You just tell me, and you'll have your check within 48 hours. For those of you that want to finish this ride, then we're going to go up to a stock held company, which is now what we are, and I'm going to move all that equity up there, and we'll convert as if we're going to pay you out, and then we'll take that and we'll make that a double up. We'll parlay that into the top of the entity. Only a few folks opted out. Your grandfather opted out, not because he wanted to, but because it's time, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. I wanted some to opt out, because without them opting out, I couldn't tell the story. I couldn't go and say, as I can now say, we exceeded the expectation. We were shooting for a mid-teen return, and we hit 23.7. Give me the benefit and call it 24% return. I needed to be able to tell that story so that in the future, and the future is now, when I was ready to do that next raise, which is beyond, because I'm not a rich man, so I can't put everything I got in it. Got to save some. I'd be able to go out, and no one then had to rely on my word, but they would be able to look at my track record, because history is the best predictor of the future. And that's now where we sit, and we're in the middle of that, and I'm about half the way through that, and I've only been at it in earnest here for about 3 to 4 days. All I've got to say now is, if you want to question this business, call Dick Greco. Mm-hmm. See what he says. I don't know what he's going to say, but just call him. I don't have to worry about it. Because the worst thing that anybody can say now is that he did exactly what he said he was going to do, and then a little bit more. And that's the reputation that you want.
And so right now you're looking for people to raise this $15 to $25 million to expand Woodies to 30, 35 locations.
And my money stays in.
Wow.
No, we're not taking money off the table.
Wow.
Oh, no. This thing is getting ready to go rocket
What's
ship.
the timeline for this entire thing? First one till today? Not that long, right? 10 years.
It's funny you say that. I'm so glad to be able to you ask that question. 5 years.
That's it.
Yesterday.
That's it? 5 years?
Yeah, 4/38, May the 19th, 2020, we closed on our first car wash.
Wow.
A date that will live in the history of the company.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we had a big team meeting yesterday, which was an amazing meeting. I mean, it's you come to a Woodie's meeting, it's an experience.
Well, listen, this has been awesome.
Yeah, man.
Thank
I
you for being
appreciate
here
the
today. I
opportunity.
really appreciate the conversation. I think for entrepreneurs, this thing was killer. Your attitude and the way you've started over a few times in your life. I love that creative conversation too, starting with the creativity, starting with this brand and letting your mind go for it and worrying about the sort of intricacies and the technicalities down the road. There's a time and a place where that's appropriate, but not in the beginning, not on day one, not when the lightning strike hits you in the head. Yeah. Let that power, let those thoughts explain themselves and express themselves.
Well, man, I appreciate. I mean this sincerely. You're the first person that I've had a couple people I've talked to, in the past, but this is the first time I've had an experience like this. And the takeaway message on this is for me. And there's a lot of young men that watch this. My son follows you, Cooper. He goes to UT now.
Shout out Cooper.
And good man. He's a big podcast guy and was telling me about this. And I want to appreciate. I really, really appreciate it. And the takeaway for young men is, it doesn't need to be high tech to make your way in life. It just needs to be high touch, and just don't quit. I mean, we all go through it.
talked to my mom the other day, and she reminded me of something. She said, "Honey, there's never been a night so long and so dark that sunrise wouldn't cure it." And I would just tell everybody, it's crazy times, but don't be discouraged. There's no time like right now to make your fortune.
And I think there's no time to be here in Tampa. I think
right.
this city
dude,
and this
you guys
region,
are gonna
this
have a
state,
ride. Oh, what I've seen just in 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
the
rocket
best is
fuel.
yet to come
Oh
here
my
in this
gosh,
city.
it's just getting going. It really is.
David moved from the West Coast. It's funny you said Ukraine earlier. David's family's from Ukraine. They got out in the early 90s, right, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and then David's a refugee here from COVID from the West Coast.
Right.
He's from Washington.
Yeah. Welcome to Fort Freedom, David.
Welcome to the land of freedom, Tampa, Florida. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you,
See
buddy.
you next week.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
you. Thank you.
All righty. Bye, everybody.